Welcome to the Lean AI podcast, where we're flipping the AI conversation on its head by focusing on holistic strategies and tactics that drive AI adoption, rather than focusing solely on overcoming the technical challenges of AI. In every Season 1 episode of the Lean AI podcast, we talk with corporate AI leaders just like you, who've uncovered secrets of driving successful AI adoption with far less wasted time and investment. Our guests challenge established views and offer disruptive perspectives, providing new actionable insights. Welcome to the Lean AI podcast. Today, we're excited to welcome Nabeel Siddiqui, the Global Senior Director and Head of Tech and Automation at SAP. With over a decade of expertise in the software industry, Nabeel is a trailblazer in integrating emerging technologies, cloud computing, and enterprise gamification. His visionary leadership in developing AI-driven solutions is reshaping how large corporations tackle complex challenges and drive digital transformation. And from spearheading innovative product strategies to winning global hackathons and earning multiple patents, Nabeel's journey exemplifies the power of technology to solve real-world problems and enhance corporate efficiency. Welcome, Nabeel. We're thrilled to have you on the show.
Thank you so much, Ben, for the lovely introduction, and kudos to you for this platform that you have created for the Lean AI podcast. And congratulations to you and your team for doing this, because this is a very important platform to share our knowledge and learn from each other.
Is your mandate to integrate AI with both internal workflows for, let's say, internal customers at SAP and to embed AI into external products, or just one or the other?
So we have Joule, which is a great product, and that is being embedded into all the customer side of things and all the products at SAP. But what we are doing in customer success, we are embedding AI into how we work in our workflows for our internal end users in customer success, so that they can prospect, they can sell better.
And it's interesting because there's really no difference. It doesn't matter if your customers are internal or external, they're still customers, right? And so using a rigorous way of identifying the right AI use case is still very much in play. So many organizations find themselves grappling with the limitations of, I'll call them traditional development methods when innovating in the kind of the AI space, especially in the complex landscape of enterprise environments. So given your extensive expertise and leadership in AI and product management, could you shed light for our listeners on the key limitations or challenges you've observed with those traditional methods in the enterprise context?
Thank you for asking this, Ben, because I think most of us share this problem. We don't want to rub the slate all the time when we are talking about building enterprise products, because that rubbing slate sometimes costs millions to the enterprises. And the idea to basically not do that or do that in iterations is to follow a lean methodology. As it is widely known and taught that it is very important to learn about the users, about the problem that we are solving first, then measure on how the hypothesis is working or not, and then go on to build so that we take all the inputs, all the ideas into proper shapes. We measure it, we know the KPIs, and then we build something which is very effective. So how we do it in our organization is we try to start with a hypothesis. And the hypothesis could be, I'm just talking about very generic hypothesis in this case, is AI useful to solve prospecting needs of an organization? So let's start with this hypothesis. Now, there are several ways to test out this hypothesis, and there are several experiments that could be conducted to test whether this is true or not. One such experiment is pilot. So you can create a pilot around to test this hypothesis, and you can do so by creating a minimal viable product, which in many cases is a UI UX mockup on a Figma. So what we usually do is, before we get into actual development cycle, we create these small experiments with focus groups where we have end users of representing different functions. In a company as big as SAP, we have a lot of functions. We have a lot of roles. And we need to select that, hey, this MVP is for this role, this function, and devise another MVP for other roles and functions. What we do is we present them with different options. Observe. We don't ask, but we observe. And we present the options. Let's say we present them with option A of a mockup and say that, hey, do you like this or you like option B? We run it through a formal A/B test experiment. But what we get out of as a result is a validation that, hey, option A is meeting the needs of the user. Why we don't ask first is sometimes because in the world of AI, we are ahead in terms of users' requirement. So we need to show, we need to present something before we form an opinion on that. So we don't form an opinion, we observe, we let the users talk, choose the options, and then we move forward.
Fascinating. It brings to mind some of the things we talk about with our clients, like Steve Jobs' quote, it's not the customer's job to know what they want. So, not asking customers what they want, but showing them what is possible. And then I love the observation rather than just asking people. I mean, asking people for what they think is great, but it's a very low strength of evidence, right? And so, observing a behavior is always a more powerful way to test a hypothesis. So you mentioned there's several different ways you can test hypotheses in your use case. Well, you said one of them is a pilot or maybe a UI, UX kind of mock-up. Is there anything else that you could share with our listeners in terms of how you might test use cases?
It could be as simple as creating a video of the use case that you have. Explain to them that as an end user, this is how someone would use it. Seeing is believing. So if they see a simulation of how their role and function would use it in a nice video, that talks to them. Then they start thinking that, hey, this is something that I need or this could be improved. Now, if they say that this is something that they need, that's direct acceptance. But the gain is also from when they come back and say that, hey, can you improve this? Because I see this person, he is a sales executive and he's using it in this fashion, but maybe for my role and for my function, this would make a better sense. So that improvement adds a lot of value to this process because then we are talking to the end users while we are in this cycle, while we have not even started development, we have great ideas. So video could be one. Then other thing could be a concierge MVP. So I was talking about focus group studies. I was talking to one set of people. So if you make it work, normally if you solve one problem, the other problems falls into place. So if I'm able to get the needs, get the product right for one set of users, normally it will be easy to make the leap or the jump from one user base to the other user base. At least you will know how many user bases is the product working for. So we have also done the concierge MVP as well, where we focus on one user, one problem, solve it, and then we move to the other users. And it's also like when you pilot, it's also very important to run a program after a pilot where you share the best practices of the pilot with the users as well. For example, if you're doing a pilot on prompting, and prompt engineering has been evolving since a couple of last years, people are using it on ChatGPT, they're writing different kinds of prompts. But when you have done a pilot on, let's say, prompting, it's very important to share that best practice that you have learned in the pilot with everyone, just so it could be a food for thought. People who are not in your focus group study, they can see that best practice and say that, hey, I am 90% confident that this will work for me. 10%, I'm going to give you more ideas. So you crowdsource. Every time you try to crowdsource different ideas, you need to find different ways to crowdsource those ideas. Don't limit yourself to the focus group. That is also what we do in experimentation.
I'd say these things are in kind of the lean methodology, right? These things are standard practice for a lot of companies now for external facing customer products. But I would say it's still fairly rare to find a team like yours that's using those for internal customers. And again, there's no difference between an internal and external customer. They still have a choice on whether to use it. They still have needs and requirements. So it's just great to see that you're applying those. So to recap for our listeners, we've talked about UI, UX mockups. We've talked about a video or an explainer video showing the use case. We've talked about a concierge MVP. Those are all things you can do before a formal pilot where you've got to basically build the whole thing. And so there's a lot of sunk costs in building an entire pilot. Those are the things you can do before that, leading up to a pilot. And here's my next question, Nabeel. When you're thinking about a portfolio of use cases, are all the use cases that you start with making it into production, or do you kill or park some of the use cases along the way?
Sometimes we persevere and sometimes we pivot. And it's also very important to do that because let's say we started with 100 use cases. And in our pilot, we saw there is a group of users who are very much interested in, let's say, 40 use cases to start with. So we persevere with those 40 use cases. We also have to make a lot of pivot discussions here as well. So let's say even after the MVP, we build the product, and in production, if people are not using the use cases in the way that they should be, then we make a decision that is this the right user base for this particular feature? This makes a lot of sense for internal products as well as I told you, because we have a lot of roles and functions. And it is their discretion at the end to use a product or a technology or not, because they are functioning without it from so many years. And we are creating this digital transformation. So having them part of this process is very important. So if we need to take a pivot at times when it is established that a particular feature is not working to a user group, maybe let's find another set of people for which it works. That is also something that we do as we develop these products, even for internal audience.
That's so interesting. So you've got a portfolio of AI use cases. What are the categories of KPIs that you might use in order to kind of measure progress through the funnel, if you will?
The KPIs vary from use case to use case, but in general, when we talk about AI, it's about productivity. So that is also one of our leading KPIs in most of the use cases. That is a particular use case improving productivity or not. If I'm not able to improve your productivity, then you will not use that particular feature. So if I'm able to show that, hey, this particular use case is improving 40% of the productivity, that's a huge number. That is saving a lot of number of hours in your day. And we can compound that with the total number of users who would use that particular feature. Now, saving time could mean different things for different people. For people who are generating quota, who are working on active pipeline, that could also mean revenue. That could also mean how much pipeline or also we are adding because we are saving your time. So a KPI can go into a nice hierarchy of different other KPIs, but the base of what we see in terms of, or any other AI solution as well, is productivity. In the end, the question is, are we helping you in terms of improving your productivity or not?
We've talked about the mechanics of how to test use cases and some KPIs and things like that, going out to the layer that wraps around that from a corporate perspective. Could you elaborate maybe a little bit more on surrounding those methods? How do you overcome resistance to change? Because presumably people aren't used to running these types of tests and doing UI, UX mockups and doing explainer videos and pilots. I guess, how do you overcome that?
With every change management comes a little bit of resistance. But then what we do is basically we run a 5-day or 4-day sprints of discussions with our focus group study. We make them part of the process. If they are part of the process, the resistance goes a little bit down, because then we are not imposing this technology on them. We are taking their opinions on whether this would be helpful for them or not. And when they see that they are decision maker in this process, when they are part of the decision that whether this technology will be introduced to them or not, then they feel empowered. And that empowerment leads to lesser and lesser resistance, and they enjoy the process rather than feeling overwhelmed of it. We tell our end users to sketch the solution with us, and they're getting good at it as well. So they're getting into the UI UX side of things. So we have our end users not only sharing the improvements in terms of words. So they're not just telling it that, hey, this feature should look like this. They're also giving us inspirations that I saw this application somewhere. It had this amazing feature. Can we do something about it in our own product?
There's always a type of resistance out there that says, don't bug users, don't bug customers, because you might show them something they don't like and you're going to offend them or you're wasting their time. I've never seen that to be the case. Usually, if you've got the right people in the room, they're just thrilled that you're actually listening to them and that they're part of the process and they feel empowered. And so that goes for internal customers as well as external customers. So that's great to hear.
Everyone loves to innovate. They just need that spark. There is an innovator in each one of us. So if you're doing a focus group study and we're asking them to solve a problem jointly, they will not say no to it.
Totally agree. It's a defining characteristic of our species, right? We are innovators. And I would say a lot of the corporate processes and culture that are out there make us put on a suit of armor. Actually, as Eric Ries talks about in his work, put on a suit of armor because we know that if we're innovative, we're going to get in trouble, or we're going to get held accountable for something that we don't want to be held accountable for. So we don't bring ideas to the table. But once you create that safe space, the sky's the limit. So that's overcoming resistance to change among internal customers. What about fostering a culture of innovation within your own team? Can you talk about that? How have you been affecting that transformation?
So I have the pleasure of leading some of the great innovators who love to put their hand up to solve any problems. But the culture is also that safety needs to be also provided to them, that, hey, no ideas are bad ideas. It could be that the timing may not be right. Could be that this is not the right time for that idea. Maybe we prioritize it to a later endpoint, but no ideas are bad ideas. So we welcome all the ideas from everyone in the team, even if our interns are giving us the best ideas at times. And we love it. So we do not restrict anyone to give out any ideas. We celebrate ideas. We often talk about, okay, who has given maximum ideas in the team? We reward them. And it's all about creating that crowdsourcing safety net that they don't feel threatened that, hey, if I tell about an idea and everyone doesn't like it, should I need to be ashamed of that? They don't need to be ashamed of that. They tried. Because of all these trials, we create products, right? So we cannot stop that process.
It's really interesting because you mentioned, safe space plus trials. And so if the process is everything needs to go through a trial, then people are much more comfortable bringing ideas to the table and saying, hey, yeah, let's try it. And knowing that trying it through a trial, a pilot, some of the experiment techniques we've talked about, knowing that that's standard operating procedure, it's less of an ego threatener and more of a, we're using the scientific method to try things out. And I don't have to be offended if one of my ideas didn't make it all the way to the end. So one of the things that, we see a lot in our work is eventually we do get to a pilot or a proof of concept, but then it kind of gets stuck in pilot or proof of concept and it doesn't actually make it the last mile to adoption. Could you maybe talk about your tips or tricks for making it the last mile to adoption from a successful pilot?
Let's say your product is released or close to release. Enablement is very important. So we host a number of enablement sessions. We localize the enablement sessions as well because we have folks from all over the world. We ensure that we have someone from that particular region part of the enablement process, part of that enablement messaging, just so we are able to target that audience better. And it's always train the trainer format. So we train other trainers just so they can evangelize better in their regions. It's word of mouth. You train one person, make them an expert of the product. They will follow the chain and they will create hundreds of other experts. And if everyone is an expert of the product, then the enablement problem and the adoption problem is solved because they will definitely use and they will get behind the product. Then we have great and amazing internal marketing strategy as well, where we create videos. We have online learning modules for any product or any technology that you want to learn. So there's a huge, great ecosystem that works in making this possible. And again, it cannot happen without the support of everyone involved in that process.
That's amazing because we certainly know that the build it and they will come strategy doesn't work in general, and certainly not in this space. When you've got some weird and wonderful way of empowering an internal process or an internal tool with AI, people aren't going to just start using it because it happens to be there. And so that's great to hear that you've got a strategy of enablement and that drives adoption. So, Nabeel, in your experience, what are the critical factors that contribute to the successful implementation and impact of AI-driven innovation in a corporate environment? And so, above and beyond just the technical research, but the actual implementation, impact, adoption of AI-driven innovation?
It is always said that anyone can have a great idea, but the recipe lies in execution of a great idea. If we talk about great ideas, we had a number of great ideas out there, but see how many Fortune 500 companies we have right now. So the recipe lies in execution. You need to have the right execution model, the right execution framework in place to have a successful implementation in the end. You need to have the kitchen set up for a great meal to be cooked. So that's what we do as well. We have frameworks. We talked about marketing. We have frameworks for marketing already set up. We have frameworks for focus group studies already set up. Whether it is a mural discussion or an in-person discussion, we have that framework. We have framework of our sprints already set up. When we talk to the engineers, we also have to translate the business problems to a technical requirement. So all those translation frameworks are also set up. So the secret lies in how we set up the kitchen. And if we have figured that out, then any idea can become a successful product.
I love the analogy, right? So the kitchen being that repeatable framework and set of tools that you don't have to reinvent the wheel every time. I think the other thing you're highlighting is when you have a portfolio of use cases, if you're treating each use case differently and everybody's kind of using their own way of testing it and has different KPIs, it's a mess. And so I love the analogy of the kitchen where it's like, look, this is the standard kit we have. If you want to cook a meal, this is the way we cook a meal. I think that's a great analogy. So Nabeel, thank you so much for sharing your insights. Unfortunately, we're almost out of time. Is there anything else you could share with your fellow corporate AI executives out there that maybe could just help them save significant amounts of time and money?
So, Ben, as I'm sharing all these methodologies, these are like the best practices followed industry wide, not necessarily in the organization that I belong to, but it is a generic comment. These are my personal opinions. And these methodologies are very general in nature and could be used for anyone in the industry. It's been a huge learning curve for me as well. Made a lot of mistakes in this process. But the idea is to learn from those mistakes and to improve on those mistakes. So there's a 3 horizon framework of strategy that everyone refers to. You move from horizon 1 to horizon 2, and then you jump to horizon 3. It's very important that you set up the right ecosystem for things to function. Things change very rapidly in AI world. The models that you're using right now may not be relevant tomorrow. There could be another model. But if you have, and again, I have to emphasize on the kitchen, if you have the right kitchen in place, any model can be a part of that kitchen. Any utensil can be a part of that kitchen. So you always emphasize on the need of the users. That's the basic. There are some foundations that always remain irrespective of technology. Today it is AI, tomorrow it could be anything else. But if you are able to map the technology to the day in life of a particular user, there is no better winning recipe, no better success metric than that. And it is the hardest thing to do because sometimes we don't understand how the user spends their day, be it a professional enterprise product or a startup which is targeted towards the public audience. It's very important to get into the shoes of your end users and then think that, hey, if I plug AI in these steps, would it make sense? Or am I just trying to fit in the digital transformation in their life?
Very insightful and very much in line with, dare I say, the biggest issue with technology-driven innovation is that people end up making it about the technology as opposed to how can we solve customer problems and needs or address customer needs with this technology. And so we're seeing just a lot of companies investing hundreds of millions of dollars in AI on the technical aspect, which is great, like should do that. Things like architecture and security and data privacy and everything like that. Good, yes, but also not testing use cases, not understanding users, not understanding the use case specifically of how is this going to fit in, like you said, to the day in the life of the customer or the user. If you're not doing that part, unfortunately, a lot of that technical side is going to go to waste because it doesn't translate to value for a user or a customer.
Absolutely.
Well, this has been great. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Lean AI podcast. We hope you found our conversation with Nabeel as insightful and inspiring as I did. Remember, the true potential of AI lies not just in the technology, but how we as leaders integrate it into organizations to drive meaningful change. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe to the Lean AI podcast on your favorite platform and leave us a review. For more Lean AI resources, insights, and tools, you can visit our website at www.leanstartup.co. And don't forget to follow us on social media for the latest updates and exclusive content. Thanks once again for joining us. Until next time, stay innovative and keep pushing the boundaries of what AI can achieve at your organization. The Lean AI podcast is brought to you by Lean Startup Co. To find out more about our Lean AI approach to generating more AI wins with far less wasted time and investment, including our training workshops, pilot programs, and full implementation offerings, visit us at www.leanstartup.co. Search the Lean AI podcast in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts, and make sure to click subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. On behalf of the team here at Lean Startup Co., thanks for listening and sharing with your colleagues and friends if you found this episode insightful.